Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
Today, we are here to talk about the book, My Imitation of Christ,
Also called The Imitation of Christ or The Following of Christ.
by Thomas A. Kempis.
Perhaps.
What?
Well, that's part of the I know his name is on that copy. And that copy had a bishop approve it and everything. And be very careful. That book is from the 50s.
Which by this point...
It says right here, Thomas... All right, it's got a weird little accenty over it. Kempis.
It's normally a Kempis, not a Kempis. So this is one of the...
It's illustrated.
Nice. This
And
is one of the
revised.
most famous and best-selling Christian books of all time.
Yes. In fact, behind the Bible, it is thought to be the most widely read, translated, and likely bought book of all time. They don't actually keep tracks quite often. A religious organization will print them. So
Yeah. I'm betting that's because people are too intimidated to read Augustine. This is going to be hard. I'll read this.
Augustine's not that hard.
Yeah, Augustine's
Aquinas is tough, man.
Anyway, it was first written in Latin in sometime between the year 1418 and 1427 in what we now call the Netherlands.
Or the Low Countries.
Yes.
Because they're below sea level.
Yes. And it originally had no name attached to it.
It was just a book.
Yes. Yes. It's widely thought to be written by Thomas, but he never signed his name on the thing, and it was simply that from what we know of his life and his writings, this is probably his book.
So originally, instead of...
So technically speaking, it was written anonymously.
So instead of opening up, yes, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis, you would open it up. Yes, I guess I'll start reading now.
Yes.
Well, it was at a time where, book art was... Well, actually, it's not that...
It was after the printing press, which is good because in a little bit over the first 200 years of it being made, it had over 740 printings.
See, I saw the number 745, and I was thinking for a moment that was a year because I hadn't been listening to Jess. I almost never listen to Jess,
Which explains a great many things.
so many things. And so I was thinking that it might have been during one of those eras where if you had like a book, it would just be like,
Sure.
we managed to strap some paper in between these two pieces of leather.
Maybe vellum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but if you have a relatively new book right there at the beginning of the era of movable type, yeah, that's going to make your book wicked popular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was also part of a devotional movement at the time, which
Sure.
was called the modern devotional movement, only they said it in Latin.
Devotio Moderna.
Hey.
Which was a movement that called for religious reform,
That's a good thing.
renewal,
Good thing.
rediscovery of pious practices,
Good
and
thing.
a simple life. And it was started in the late 1400s, so, soon before this was written.
Mm-hmm.
And it was popular in the Low Countries and in Germany up until the Reformation, because, of course, then they all became Protestant.
Well, no, it would make sense because in this time, the church had been rent by the Western Schism, where there were multiple anti-popes, and it was just a huge mess. So when that's getting resolved, there'd be a real desire to renew devotion and proper practice, proper
Yes.
piety.
Yes, and this Devotio Moderna sounds like something the Popish Plot could totally get behind pushing if anybody,
I don't know, because they seem to push the pious practices, so they'd be like, pray your rosary every day, and I'd be like,
Pray
can
your
I
rosary
pray
every
something
day.
else every day?
But it's more penitential for you than for almost anyone else I know.
do the Divine Mercy instead.
Well, of course. But, still, they'd be like, we all pray the rosary every day.
We all pray the rosary every day.
Every day.
Anyway, the book technically is composed of 4 books. Book 1 is on helpful counsel in the spiritual life.
Okay.
Book 2 is directives for the interior life.
Okay.
Book 3 is on interior consolations.
Yep.
And book 4 is on the Blessed Sacrament.
Never gotten that far.
That's like the best book of the books.
Well, then they should have put it first.
Well, you got to get through all the other stuff to get to the good things.
You're building up.
It's just like MASH. You got to go through all the other stuff, and then okay.
I mean, they were very, strict
I
on,
think
their spiritual life. If they gave you the good stuff first, then you might not read the boring parts.
Yeah, but I don't get that far into it, and I feel really bad about myself about how unpious I am and how I don't do enough penances.
I think
Yes.
I think if you're looking at the Mass of having to get through all that other stuff, you might be just ever so slightly missing a point somewhere.
Yeah, well, this
I'm
book...
sloppily describing the preparatory work you go through before you get to the Lamb's Supper.
Yes, and he does have a point, because you can very much tell it was written in the, late Middle Ages type time, because it is everything is you are the worst sinner ever, and it's written for monks or people who are living in communities, so it's like,
So they've met me.
so it's like, don't talk too much or have friends that are your own friends, because you should love everyone equally.
You shouldn't have so
except
many
for
opinions.
God.
You shouldn't have so many opinions.
Or it's like, that does not really work with your life. Like, if I just don't talk to the kids all day, they assume I'm mad at them. Not I'm being super holy and not wasting my time talking to you.
The real issue is that when she's silent, she also seems rather dour.
Well, it's because she keeps glaring.
Yeah. Seriously.
All right.
I occasionally have to ask her. Occasionally, when we're just having some individual quiet time, I occasionally have to ask her, "Did I do something?"
You know what you did.
No, he doesn't. We already discussed. He wasn't listening to me explain what was wrong. Unlike the last book we discussed, which this one is not a visionary. So it has chapters that are just short chapters, and then it will have chapters where it starts out with Christ speaking. That's just a literary device. He was not like recounting things.
He wasn't transcribing.
No. It's lasted this long, so it's not like anything he puts in the mouth of Christ is wrong or heretical. But, and then for those ones, they have a short prayer afterwards. So, you're like listening and then you pray. And there's also ones where a disciple is speaking, which is kind of like with John, where you're kind of putting yourself into the book itself.
I really should get around to finishing that one of these days.
Yeah.
Or, not even read it that way, but just read it more devotionally.
Yeah, after I read through it the first time through, I would occasionally just flip to a section and read that chapter. Like, I know you're not supposed to, randomly go open the Bible and be like, that's my verse for today, but it's just, I don't know what I want to read. I'm just, anything I read in here is going to be good.
It's all solid.
Yes.
Now, I have a question. This is a very old book.
Very old.
And it was written by, it's generally attributed to Thomas à Kempis.
Yes.
Normally, when you have a book that has been approved for so many centuries, it's written by somebody with an ST before their name. What's up with this guy?
Well, we know that he was born in 1380 in the Rhineland.
Okay.
And then he died July 25th, 1471 in the Netherlands. So
Yeah.
he was like 91 at the time.
He had a good long life.
Yes, and at the time that was all part of the Holy Roman Emperor, so he was moving between sections of the same country. He was a canon regular, which is what they call a priest that was living in community. So like a monk who's also a priest.
Yeah. What they call in the East a hero monk?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he instructed the novices, and he wrote and copied lots of books. Like, we know that he did at least 4 copies, handwritten of the Bible. He also did biographies, sermon, and he did a series of booklets, which we think is probably what became the book, which is part of why we think he's the one who wrote it.
Gotcha. Yeah, sounds like a pretty good life.
And he has a local following.
Okay.
But there are 2 possible reasons why he has not officially been declared a saint.
Okay, number one.
Number 1, and the most likely one, is he never admitted to writing the book in his life. So this great spiritual thing that, if it had his name on it, that would be part of the, cause for sainthood. We can't put it in his cause because we're not 100% sure he wrote it. But the second story, which I find hilarious, I mean, it's not hilarious if if it actually, when it happens, what it's like, but just the fact that, this is what barred someone from sainthood.
And as we discussed when we were talking about Saint Lawrence a little while back, when you get saints or individuals that are this far back, quite oftentimes some of the stories are probably factual, and some of the stories maybe a little more on the extent
We're fairly
of legendary
certain this is
here.
made up completely, and we don't know exactly when, but like all the early reports have none of this information.
Anybody who competed in high school sports knows that the older they get, the better they were.
Yes. But the second story, and again, remember, he was like 90, 91 when he died, depending on when his birthday was, was he was buried alive.
Ah!
And then they went to dig him up because like a year or 10 years after they open up the cause, they dig him up, see in case they're, and they had found that he had attempted to dig himself out of his grave, just clawing at the top. And therefore, according to this myth, he's not a saint because he clearly was not ready for death when he attempted to escape from being buried alive.
Oh, that's harsh.
It is. Which is why it's like, there's no evidence that this is what happened.
So instead they want him like, all right, I was buried alive, but I accept my death.
I'm 90. There's not much more I'm gonna do. I guess I'll just.
I don't know if they're
try
burying you.
not to panic.
If you were a great Catholic writer and you were buried to death, I mean, it could get you that automatic martyrdom kind of a thing.
Well, but they'd have to like bury you alive
on purpose.
Yeah, in odium fide.
And I have to say, I mean. I know you live with a group of people that you get annoyed with them, but at the point at which you're murdering a 90-year-old monk to get rid of him sooner, that seems a bit, much.
Well, but I can understand. It's the Middle Ages. People don't live that long. When is this guy going to die?
It's probably simply the fact that, it's the Middle Ages. We don't know exactly how to tell for sure someone is dead. If perhaps, he was in a deep coma.
Yeah, perhaps he had a really, really deep sleep and somebody's like, finally, that guy died.
Maybe he snored horribly and suddenly he was sleeping for a long time and he wasn't snoring. So they figured, well.
I mean, even today, part of the way to prove that the Pope is dead is you yell his name 3 times really loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now we also do things like, check his
check
heartbeat
his
pulse and so forth, but it's still in the official. There's a guy whose job it is to yell his given name 3 times really loud.
Because the one time they didn't do that, they buried the guy alive. Sure. I'm going to go with, well, again, we can't really attribute the book to him, so we have a paucity of evidence of his holiness.
Yes.
Which may well have been profound, but we just don't have any proof of it.
Well, I mean, he's got to be pretty holy whenever we read this book. It's like, well, I feel horrible.
Again,
I'm not that good.
If he wrote the book, it could be somebody else whose spiritual wisdom makes me feel terrible.
It's an imitation of Christ.
That's what we're all supposed to be doing all the time anyway.
Yes, but I'm just saying, we are all...
Yes, we're piss poor at it.
We're piss poor at it.
I mean, you're not wrong. That's why we need grace.
Yes.
So, go down below and talk about... I have no idea.
Comment on your favorite way to imitate Christ.
Oh, there we go.
Or great stories about people being buried alive.
Unless you're my 5th grade catechism teacher. I heard enough stories about people being buried alive.
That explains a lot.
Although, if you are Jessica's 5th grade catechism teacher,
welcome.
Please let us know, because that would actually that would be actually kind of cool. I mean,
all we know is
it's totally within our demographic, but
all we know is that she was a good Catholic and now she's a gooder Catholic. Details are very sparse.
Yes.
We want to know the real dish.
We want to get some details.
Give this episode a like, subscribe to our channel, ring the church bell to be notified the next time we imitate Christ, and until that next time,
remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
And share that love. Letting Jess run away with facts. Take 1.
And that's different from what we normally do. How?
Sometimes you run away with feelings or thoughts.
Indeed.
Or opinions.
Fair enough.
No. Yes.
Yeah,
he runs away with feelings.
All the feels.
So you run away with facts. He runs away with feelings or opinions. I run away with thoughts.